Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigator's Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
You guys have been hearing for a long time about how much I love Crosstracks, but now you're going to hear from somebody else. So we got George Gerges here. George is a member and a user of Crosstracks. George, tell me real quickly what you love about Crosstracks.
The simplicity of using it and the ability to customize everything that you could do with Crosstracks is awesome. It actually allowed me to take the way that I do my business and implement it into their system. And not only am I able to manage 10 or 15 cases, I'm able to manage 50 to 100 cases with the same effort.
Fantastic. So Crosstracks, the case management system, they are SOC 2 certified. Basically, that's an encryption, really an upgrade. They're the only ones out there that are doing it. So please support this great sponsor that supports our show. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. Crosstracks, if you're an investigator, you should be using them today.
Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today, we're talking about insurance for private investigators, and we're joined by the president of Orep, Isaac Peck. Isaac breaks down some myths about insurance and why you need to make sure you're covered. This is a necessary part of your business model. You don't need it until you really need it. So please welcome Isaac Peck and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, I'm really honored and I'm happy to welcome Isaac Peck to the program. Isaac is a sponsor through Orep. You've probably heard their commercials over the last year or so on the podcast, and I am appreciative to have him as a sponsor, and I wanted him to come on and basically introduce himself and talk a little bit about insurance. We all need it. It's the thing nobody talks about. So Isaac, I want to welcome you to the program. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm super glad to be here, and I'm doing well.
Okay. So we met about a year ago in person at Osmosis out in San Diego. And I remember you and I having a conversation before that, and you're like, should I go to this? And I encourage you to go because I thought it would be a good opportunity for you and I to kind of chat and just talk about the industry a bit. So how you been in the last year?
It's been great. I mean, we've come a long way. I've been to a lot of private investigator conferences, and we launched our magazine for private investigators, Working PI. Mm-hmm. And it's been really rewarding to meet all the investigators kind of across the country and hear about the different niches they've kind of carved out in the investigative space. Sure. And provide quality insurance to those PIs who need it.
Yeah, and every state is different, which is frustrating for you, I'm sure. The requirements. For instance, New York, we're not actually required to have liability insurance. We're required to carry a bond, and that's pretty much it. To me, that's
right.
Career suicide, but those are the rules in New York, right?
Not a lot of states actually require insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, even here in California, you're required to carry liability insurance if you have an LLC. Or if you're armed. Mm-hmm. So the requirements vary by states, and a number of states have kind of the bonding requirement, right? A $10,000 bond. And unfortunately for you and other investigators, bonds don't do a whole lot to protect your business. And
don't realize that.
Right.
What do they pay for legal fees? That's it, right? They basically pay for a lawyer if you need one, but it doesn't offer you really anything, right?
Yeah, the bond generally doesn't give you Matt, any defense, right? So the bond would be after you get defeated in court or go bankrupt, the consumer then can go to the state and say, hey, Matt Spaier really did me dirty, and I'd like the $10,000 bond, but it does nothing to defend you. It doesn't pay your legal fees.
Oh, wow.
It
Okay.
exists for the consumer to file a claim with the state saying, I've been egregiously harmed by this licensee, and it looks like he doesn't have any money left. So please give me the money from the bond.
Yeah.
So by the time they're filing a claim with the bond,
The nails in the coffin.
you're bankrupt, or you've demonstrated yourself to not have any resources for them to go after.
Right. And, the type of work that we do, when we mess up, there's no little whoopsies, right? It's, you're now liable for whatever, your client was entitled to for damages potentially, if they can connect the dots to say, because of some negligence on your end, they lost their claim, where they would have won it had you done it the proper way, and
Right.
now you're starting to talk about the value of like a personal injury case or something like that. And that's a big deal. And
Right.
especially for folks that don't an LLC or don't, do corporations, where they're just a mom and pop and they're opening up, and I'm, Matt Spaier Investigations, and I'm a sole proprietor. Like, to me, like, that's the biggest gamble in the world. don't do that, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're in business, you should get business insurance. I think what a lot of private investigators don't realize is that insurance, $1 million of coverage for their business is not as expensive as they perhaps think it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can, our minimum limits start around $500 for the year.
Wow.
And you can get, 1 million, 3 million for $600 or $700. So it's incredibly kind of affordable in terms of having $1 million of coverage to protect your business. If anybody, if you ever make a mistake, or anybody ever accuses you of making a mistake, it's highly worthwhile if you're, serious about running any kind of business.
Yeah, to me, it's a must have, right? So like, when you're figuring in, like, all right, what's my hourly? What do I charge? How much am I gonna, ask for this service that I'm doing, right? Like, that's all part of the formula. All your insurances, all your costs, your database costs, your hourly. Like, you should be figuring that into your number. Like, there should be no excuse for you, why you don't have insurance. It's a no-brainer to me, but I don't know. People like to live dangerously. Not me. So,
Right. I mean, my experience in the business, my old boss always used to say, I never try to sell someone on the concept of insurance.
right.
So I won't belabor the point, right? We
Either
can
you
talk
get it
about
or you don't, right?
coverages, what I will say again is it's really quite affordable, right? For $500, $600, $700 for the year, having $1 million of coverage for your business that protects you with general liability and E&O insurance. It's not all that expensive, right? It's something that everyone can afford.
So for folks that don't know, E&O is errors and omissions. So, if you leave something into your report and it's, damaging, it would be something that would be covered. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that folks really don't consider all this stuff. I mean, to me, always a no-brainer. Well, when you're starting something, you want to protect whatever it is you're building, from these things. And then, you start talking about online and doing online research and housing data as well. And that's like a whole nother animal of like cyber attacks and things like that, and having that kind of insurance. How does that work?
So, I mean, the core of the policy that, say, you or other private investigators should be considering would be a combination of general liability and errors and omissions insurance.
Okay.
And that, there are some kind of fly-by-night insure tech companies that, when you Google private investigator insurance, perhaps they're just going to try to sell you, just general liability, right? Or just errors and omissions insurance. And so my recommendation would be to seek out a program or a broker like Orep, and there are other very established players in this space that specialize in private investigator insurance and that are offering kind of a single policy that provides coverage for both general liability and E&O insurance.
Right.
Not to bore your readers, but I'll just kind of briefly explain that the general liability provides coverage for bodily injury and property damage. And that's kind of the typical insurance that we might see in slip and fall cases. So if you slip and fall at your local Starbucks or McDonald's, that's a bodily injury claim, where they're saying, you're responsible for my bodily injury. And from a PI perspective, that might come into play if you have a retail office, or if you're out in the field doing surveillance work, if you're doing some process serving, right? If you're kind of out in the world,
you throw a banana peel out your window and somebody slips and falls.
Then someone could make the claim that you damaged their property, or that they were injured or sustained bodily injury because of you. And so that's the general liability portion of the policy. And then, like I said, the kind of the leaders in this space, including Orep, would sell a policy that includes both of these coverage, and the second component would be E&O insurance, so errors and omissions coverage, and that would cover you for any professional claims or professional mistakes that you make in your report. And I talked to an investigator. It was a few months ago now, and he called me up and he said, I completely understand why I might need general liability, but I don't understand, why I would need E&O or professional liability, right? Like what kind of claim could arise out of that? And so, there's a couple of examples, right? I love to research and look at past lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. So one of the examples that comes to mind is claims around accidents, where PIs get hired to go in and collect evidence and store that evidence and report on that evidence and testify to that evidence. So we've seen a number of claims where they lose the evidence.
Right.
They don't hold on to it. They don't store it correctly, and their client ends up in a real bad position where they can't defend a claim against themselves. They can't properly adjudicate insurance matters, those kinds of things. And so in those cases, PIs will get sued by their own clients for mishandling evidence, and that's an example of a professional liability claim. Yeah. But also, if you fail to report something in your investigation, if you misreport something in your investigation, if you mess up in the preparation of your report and provide bad information, or miss something,
or maybe you just jumble your notes and you report something completely wrong. You just made a mistake on something, right? It wasn't intentional, wasn't malicious. It was just negligent, right?
Right. That would be a professional liability claim.
Right.
And that happens often. And the other important reason why you'd want both in a single policy is not just for kind of cost savings, but oftentimes general liability policies alone will exclude claims that arise from professional services. So even if you were doing something and it caused bodily injury or it caused property damage, the insurance company then could come back and say, well, that looks like a claim that came out of professional services, so we're going to exclude coverage for that. Right. So you really want a policy that's from someone that specializes in the space that includes both coverages.
So would you say that upon reviewing people's policies? Because I'm sure that's something you do, right? Show me what you have right now, and I'll give you a quote or whatever. I mean, obviously you've probably seen some of these things missing, right? So that's what you've noticed on these policies that are being written.
Yeah, like say, for example, in a state where you're only required to carry general liability. If you go out and you just buy a general liability policy, you have all of the E&O exposure that you're not covered for.
Right. And you're just doing whatever the state tells you need, not really getting.
Yeah, because some states do require general liability if you're armed or if you're a PI, right? Just as a condition of licensing or as a condition of carrying. And if the well-meaning insurance agents, right, will be like, oh, here's a general liability policy. So the lack of kind of specialization in the PI space means that they can cover you for GL, but what you really need is a combination policy. And the truth is, if you go to someone that specializes in it, you're not going to really pay any extra for the E&O portion.
Right. They're gonna understand what you need. And I think sometimes what it comes down to is like that agent's goal was to give you the lowest quote possible. So you'll take it, right? Thinking that you're covered,
right?
Understanding that you don't really have what you're paying for is not what you think you're paying for.
Right. Or they just don't know any better, right? That they don't know a lot about the exposures that PIs need to cover.
Sure. So what's your opinion on terrorism coverage? Because I know like that's something that always it's like a hot button topic. Do I need it? Do I not need it? How do you approach that when PIs?
I mean, it came out of 9/11, right? So 9/11 happens. Insurance carriers realize that they lost a lot of money, and everybody then tries to add terrorism exclusions onto their insurance policies.
Right.
And then all the Department of Insurance, organizations across the country pass laws, and I think the Fed even passed laws surrounding terrorism coverage.
Sure.
If you're going to exclude it, I'm pretty sure that they mandate that you have to offer it in some forms, or different types of insurance have to make the offer for terrorism coverage.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of a big, the baloo about terrorism coverage because of what happened on 9/11 and the terrorism attacks and the way that affected the insurance industry, where everyone was like, okay, well, let's just exclude it.
Yeah.
And then the government said, well, no, you can't just exclude it. You need to offer it, etc. Right. So from a professional standpoint, I would say it really depends on the type of work that you're doing.
Yeah. And where you're
right.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we sell insurance to not just private investigators, but to all different kinds of professionals. And most professionals don't need terrorism coverage.
Right.
Right. If you were consulting for the CIA or the government, or consulting for government agencies or surrounding security or those kinds of things, where terrorism might be a legitimate threat or factor in your business, then it might make sense for you to get it. But sure. For the vast majority of professionals, including the vast majority of private investigators, I would say that you don't need it.
So how about interruption of services, right? So this was something that was a hot button topic during COVID, right? So you had all these mandatory shelter in place things, and I didn't have interruption insurance, but I know that there were businesses out there that did, and then insurance companies were like, we don't know if we're going to honor this or not, and there was some back and forth. What have you seen with that, or what's your opinion about that?
I mean, we haven't seen any professionals get compensated because of COVID, or because
we all did. We all got PPP.
Business slowed down. So yeah, I haven't seen an insurance product and I mean, with our company, we insure over 11,000 professionals.
Right.
And so we haven't seen that at all. And I don't think that there's a product that can really protect you from COVID type slowdowns and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So like I started doing investigative work shortly after 9/11. I mean, I was doing some, prior to that, but for somebody. So I started kind of on my own, literally like a month or two after that,
Right.
in-house for somebody. And when I was getting my policies, man, it still stung. Like being in New York. So you're just like, do I get this coverage or not? And it's like, do I think there's going to be like another attack? And I remember like every year I got a little more comfortable saying no on it, as we got further away. But I remember like one of my mentors was in business at that time. And I remember having conversations with him, and he's just like, Matt, I don't know how my doors are still open. Like I've lost 3/4 of my clients, are not like, they were either down, their offices were down in that area, or,
Right.
they just didn't know what was doing. And I was like, wow, that's awful. He survived. he,
Right.
he didn't go out of business. It all ended up working out, but it's like you think about that stuff. And then, we all faced that with COVID too, like, this whole shutdown thing, and, are we going to go out of business, and all this other stuff. So it's definitely something to think about. I mean, I'm definitely, having coverage. I'm pro coverage on things. Just, I'd rather have it than not have it. And that's
Right.
Again, you're building it into your price point anyways, like you should be anyways. Is the way I look at it. So we're going to jump out and take a break here. And when I come back, I want to talk a little more about the magazine, because I think we should highlight that a little bit. It's actually a neat little thing that you're putting together to educate the investigators. And it's not just about insurance. It's about a whole bunch of other stuff. Everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Are you drowning in fees with your current provider? IRB Search offers the highest quality data at the most competitive prices. Founded by investigators for investigators, IRB is tailored specifically toward helping you close your cases. We're currently offering PI Perspective listeners an exclusive 30-day free trial of our system. So simply go to irbsearch.com and apply using the promo code PIP30 to claim this promotion. Information Education Consultants is proud to announce that their Certificate of Professional Investigation is now available online at IECOIT.com. If you're interested in learning the investigation profession, what better resource to consult than the mind of the nationally renowned private investigator, Rory McMahon. Rory has compiled 40 years of experience into an online training resource for the benefit of the current and next generation of professional investigators. The site offers CEUs for current licensed professionals and is a recommended stop for our true crime aficionado friends and family. Check it out today at IECOIT.com. That's IECOIT.com. Looking for an insurance agent that puts you first? Every PI business is different. That's why Orep Insurance can shop multiple markets to ensure you get the best coverage to meet your unique business needs. Orep's model is business by the golden rule, and for over 20 years, they've built their business by putting their clients first. So come enjoy a fast online application and same-day certificates of insurance at orep.org. Orep has coverage for armed investigators, executive protection, and even has a separate policy for security firms. The application takes less than 5 minutes, so visit orep.org today. orep.org. Check out the latest issue of PI Magazine, available online or via hard copy. Visit PIMagazine.com to learn more.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, we're here with Isaac Peck from Orep. Isaac, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be back, man.
Yeah. So great having you back and discussing this topic, which I think is something that we don't talk enough about, but enough about insurance. We're going to talk about the Working PI, which is a magazine that's your brainchild, and you've put it together. And tell me a little bit about the publication, what it does.
Yeah, so this is Working PI magazine. This is our first issue, and we published this in the spring of this year. So our next issue is coming out right now. The mailing in the next couple of weeks should be fully delivered before the end of October. And the fall issue is mailing to 25,000 private investigators nationwide.
Wow, that's great.
So we're shooting to be the most widely read publication for PIs in the country. We figured there's around 50,000 investigators across the country, and we see a real opportunity to publish a publication that reaches 60 to 70% of them nationwide.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a void. There's not much content out there, and it's offered not just print, right? You have it digitally as well, right?
Yeah, so we've got a print and a digital publication, and the publishing is kind of an important part of our business model. I've been a journalist and writing and covering professional industries for over a decade. And one of the things that we found kind of in smaller industries such as investigators and niche professional industries, there's not a lot of folks kind of producing real high quality journalism in the space. Not that there's not news and great publications and podcasts like yourself, right? But there's a much smaller selection of high quality journalism and people that are dedicated to serving small niche professions such as investigators.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the articles I like to read are not so much like how did I solve this crime, or here's something that was interesting I worked on, all that. I'm more of a how-to guy. Like when I'm reading something and it's talking about like tax advice and things of that nature, like that's something I find interesting, and I glean more from that from those articles. So that's a good way to do things, I think.
Right. I mean, I've been traveling across the country and meeting all kinds of specialists and people that have built their businesses around particular niches and particular services, and so not only is that fascinating to see kind of all the different ways that investigators can run their businesses, but also I think it's informative in terms of for other investigators to really share information around the different types of investigations, how they approach this situation and this type of investigation and so on.
Right. And you're constantly looking for people to contribute, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for good stories.
Yeah. Always just that how to me is just so much. Like I glean more from it. Even the podcast, right? So like having guests on them, I always want to learn about how to do something new or who somebody is with how they're doing it than like a story about a crime. I mean, but there's a place for that too. But I always appreciate like to me, a trade magazine should be, hey, this is how you do this particular thing, or if you're interested in learning more about this particular service, this is how it works and where you should look to do it. I feel like that's something I want to read, and I think that's kind of the trend out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just I hear you completely, right? The how-to is really important, but there's also just kind of news in your industry, right? What's happening in the private investigator space. There are big lawsuits against private investigators around the country. What's the story behind those? What's changing in the laws? What's the staying up to date in terms of what's happening in the industry? Yeah. What are the legal and liability related issues that are actually happening right now? So news, right? It's a small industry, but there's still news that PIs should be aware of.
Oh, 100%. And, data privacy is probably the number one out there, right? Just understanding that our rights to do what we do are being affected every day. You know, there's somebody out there that's riding on a platform, usually a political platform, because that's what their constituency wants to hear, right? Oh, you're going to protect my social security number and my date of birth. Yes, I'm all for that, but not understanding that, you know, folks like us need a carve out to be able to do that work so we can effectuate the service that we're hired to do, that we have the right to do. And a lot of times, you know, people misunderstand that. They don't know. It's why something, an organization like NCISS, the National Council of Investigative Security Services, is so important. You want to talk about, you know, staying on top of your information. You know,
Right.
I think it needs to come from all different places, right? It's not just message boards from these associations. There's also the publications like this that bring awareness to certain issues. So it's a great thing that you're doing. You know, and there are some others that are out there, but the more the merrier, you know, and folks have different focuses and different goals on things. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good thing you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, there is if there's 50,000 private investigators nationwide, right? Our analysis concludes that over 90% of them are not receiving a print publication. So 45,000 PIs. So we're printing 25,000 copies of every issue and mailing it to PIs across the country. So all PI firms in Florida, all PI firms in Texas, every licensed private investigator in Michigan, and so on. Trying to connect the industry and you know, provide an avenue of communication where PIs can stay connected and tell their stories and stay up to date on the information that's happening in the investigative community.
And there's no cost associated with that, right? It's just something.
Yeah, it's a free subscription.
So if folks weren't in one of those countries, one of those states, where would they, how would they get a copy of the issue?
So most states have well, you can go to workingpimag.com and subscribe.
Right.
And that would be the way to get guaranteed delivery of the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that we're reaching PIs is, you know, we're mailing to licensed, certified PIs across the various states.
Right.
And so most states, you know, have licensing. The vast majority of states have licensing. Mm-hmm. And so we can work with the states to make sure that our magazine reaches almost everyone in a given state.
Yeah, and I think what I also appreciate is you're not like cranking these out like every month. You know, like you're taking your time to really put good content in there and screen it and make sure that, you know, what's being put out is actually worthy of being put out. It's not just, I got a deadline to meet, let's just throw some words together and talk about, you know, this PI that. That there's substance in the content that you're putting out, and I think that's important. I appreciate that because I don't like wasting my time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're moving into 3 issues a month. I mean, sorry, 3 issues per year. Mm-hmm. So every 3 to 4 months, PIs will get a new issue.
Right. That's great.
So anyone that's listening that wants to, you know, get guaranteed delivery of the magazine at no cost, you can go to workingpimag.com and just subscribe right there.
Yeah. That's a great thing you're doing, man. And like I said, the more the merrier, and, you know, everyone has different perspectives on this industry. And, you know, sometimes when you're reading the regular magazines that are out there, you know, it's the same writers, guilty as charged, the same writers that are writing things. And, you know, sometimes it's good to have a different perspective of somebody else and something that's fresh. And I always I feel that there's a time and place, like even folks that do writing, that, you know, you need to kind of pass the torch and, you know, give other people in the industry a chance to have a voice on things, right? Which I think is really important because there are a lot of really talented people in this space. It's funny you say 50,000 because I've seen numbers as high as 90 and I've seen numbers as low as 35. So it's like if you take the median of that, it's somewhere around 50. So you're probably not far off on what's out there.
It could easily be more than 50.
Yeah.
But I agree with you completely in terms of kind of the plurality of voices,
Yeah.
right? And we're not just kind of going to people and saying, hey, well, will you write a story for us? Will you write a story for us? We're doing original journalism and deep research on topics to produce news and valuable stories for the industry. And we're working with, real experienced folks like yourself.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to say is we're getting real deep into the states, right? Having conversations with the states, how many PIs are in this state and so on.
Yeah.
So I'll grant you that there's more than 50,000.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of work on kind of how many PIs are in each state because of the work that we're doing with the magazine.
I know you have, man. We've had these conversations about a year ago. Like I know, and I did the same thing, with Investigator's Toolbox, right? Is it even worth it to do it? How many people are out there, right? And just understanding that. And I think probably the most important aspect of all this, it's not how many that are out there, it's what the growth rate is, and that's between 9 and 10%. Depending on what study you read. And what that means is that every year, there's, if you want to use 50,000, there's 5,000 people that are just getting into this business that has no idea what they're doing, because there isn't that real passion to train up people that, that are new to the industry. It's starting to change. California does it with their Enlight program. And I think Florida does it with a boot camp that they have. But, these folks that are new to the industry, like they need to know they need insurance, right? They need to know, that they're, this is how you do a certain task. This is the expectation. This is what you should be charging. These are the ethics that you need to do. It's not what you see on TV. Like there's actual like ethics behind what we do.
Oh yeah.
So just kind of understanding all that stuff. And I think working PI is filling that bill. It's helping to do that, and that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's all good stuff. I was very supportive when we met and you were talking about doing this. I'm like, yes, like this is great, because there's always room for more content, more quality content, in my opinion. So thanks for doing that and what you're doing. I think it's great. So we're going to wind down over here. Isaac, give me a way that folks could get a hold of you if they had more questions about things.
Yeah, so if you'd like to subscribe to the magazine at no cost at all, you can claim a free subscription and get guaranteed delivery at workingpimag.com. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in insurance, you'd like to perhaps have someone compare what you currently have, or maybe you don't have insurance, and you're interested in a quote, you can visit orep.org. We've been providing insurance to professionals for over 20 years, yep. And over 11,000 businesses trust us with their insurance.
Absolutely. And definitely you want to look at the private investigator part of that when you visit the website, like you had mentioned.
Select your profession, private investigator. Yes.
Right.
We also do insurance for security guards and security firms as well. Mm-hmm. And some PIs do both, right? They have a private investigator license, and then they also have a security segment of their business. And so we have policies that can cover you for both of those services. In which case you might want to select security guard when you're on our website.
Right. And I got to say, as someone who personally went through the whole application process of it, it's easy. It's like 5 minutes and you're done. And there's not a lot of heavy lifting to get a good quote. And your staff was awesome in getting back to me and following up and making sure that I understood, everything I needed to understand, or if there were any other questions about things. So customer service, in my opinion, spot on. And again, I'm
really glad to hear that.
my own personal experience. So that's it. So, okay. So we're going to wind down here. Thank you so much for jumping on. I know it's not the most terribly interesting topic to talk about, but it's necessary, right? So we got to make sure we talk about things. We got to make sure folks out there understand that they got to be covered for all these things. So Isaac, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Take care, everybody. And we'll catch you next week on the next episode.
Thank you, Isaac, for coming on and giving us the update we need about Investigator insurance. Please check out Orep and see how to get the coverage you need. Also, special thanks to Crosstracks, IRB, and Investigation Education Consultants for sponsoring our show. So please support our great supporters. If you haven't joined Investigator's Toolbox, now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Network, learn. Use code PIP 2018-36 and save 10%. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.